Story number 1. Strangers in the Snow, a winter's haunting. I still wake up in the dead of night. The memory of that harrowing winter camping trip in the Colorado Rockies etched into my mind like the deep grooves carved into the snow-covered ground. My name is Ethan Parker, and the events that unfolded during our isolated retreat have left an indelible mark on my soul. A constant reminder of the thin veil between camaraderie and the unknown. It was the beginning of January, and my two closest friends, Jake and Laura, and I decided to escape the hustle and bustle of our daily lives for a weekend of solitude in the remote wilderness. We had chosen a secluded campsite nestled deep within the mountains, far from the nearest trailhead, eager to immerse ourselves in nature's untouched beauty and the crisp winter air. The drive to the campsite was nothing short of arduous. The snow had begun to fall early, blanketing the landscape in a thick layer of white that seemed to mute all sounds. Our vehicle navigated the winding mountain roads with difficulty, the headlights cutting through the swirling snowflakes as we made our way to our destination. By the time we arrived, dusk had settled, and the temperature had plummeted, the icy fingers of winter gripping the world outside. Setting up camp was a laborious task, each of us battling the biting cold to pitch our tents and gather firewood. The area was encircled by towering pines, their branches heavy with snow, standing like silent sentinels guarding secrets long forgotten. As night descended, we huddled around the campfire, the warmth of the flames a stark contrast to the freezing temperatures outside. We shared stories, laughed, and reveled in the comforting glow of friendship under the vast expanse of a star-studded sky. Around 11 p.m., just as the fire began to wane, we started to hear its soft, rhythmic footsteps crunching on the snow surrounding our campsite. First, we dismissed it as the natural sounds of the forest, perhaps an animal foraging for food or the wind shifting snow across the ground. But the footsteps were too deliberate, too patterned to be anything but human. Jake glanced nervously towards the darkness, his breath visible in the frigid air. "Did you guys hear that?" he whispered, his voice tinged with unease. Laura nodded, her eyes darting towards the perimeter of our campsite. "Yeah, sounds like someone walking around us." Despite the growing tension, we chose to remain inside our tents, the safety of our temporary shelter offering little protection from the eerie sounds outside. The footsteps continued, moving closer and then receding, creating a chilling rhythm that echoed through the silent night. The wind howled louder now, amplifying every sound, making it difficult to discern reality from our heightened fears. By midnight, exhaustion had set in, and we decided to retire for the night, hoping that the footsteps would cease as we drifted into sleep. We crawled into our sleeping bags, the warmth of the fire still lingering in our bones. But the unease from earlier refused to dissipate. Just as I was beginning to relax, a sudden, sharp knock echoed through the tent. My heart raced as I exchanged startled glances with Jake and Laura. "What was that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Before anyone could respond, the tent flap was yanked open, a blast of freezing air rushing in. I instinctively pulled the flap back, peering out into the inky blackness. There was no one there, only the swirling snow and the dense shadows cast by the surrounding trees. But then, my eyes caught something in the snow, a set of large, human footprints leading away from our tent and vanishing into the darkness. "Someone's out there," Jake murmured, his voice trembling. "But where are they going?" Laura shivered, pulling her sleeping bag tighter around her. "Maybe they just wandered by. Let's try to get some sleep." But sleep eluded us. The eerie silence that followed the initial knocking was now punctuated by the soft creaking of the tent fabric and the distant howl of a lone wolf. As I lay there, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something or someone was silently observing us from the shadows. The next morning, the snow had stopped falling, leaving the campsite in a pristine, untouched state. The sun struggled to penetrate the thick canopy of trees, casting a pale, diffused light over everything. We emerged from our tents, the morning chill still biting at our faces, and surveyed the aftermath of the previous night. "Those footprints," I said, pointing to the spots where we had seen them the night before. "They're still here." Jake knelt down, examining the prints more closely. "They're fresh, and they don't lead anywhere obvious. It's like they just appeared overnight." Laura stood up, her expression grim. "We need to leave. Something isn't right here." We hurriedly packed our gear, the sense of urgency growing with each passing moment. As we loaded the last of our belongings into the vehicle, a strange stillness settled over the forest, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The snow around us was immaculate. The footprints we had seen the night before now completely vanished, as if they had never existed. Perplexed and unnerved, we decided to head back to civilization, eager to put the terrifying experience behind us. The drive back was tense, the eerie quiet of the forest now replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to press in on us from all sides. Every creak of the vehicle and every gust of wind sent our hearts racing, the memories of the knocking and the ghostly footprints lingering like a dark shadow. By the time we reached the main road, dawn was breaking, the first rays of sunlight struggling to pierce through the lingering snow. We didn't stop until we were safely back in town, the warmth of our homes welcoming us like a beacon of hope after the terrifying ordeal. In the days that followed, we couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us from the mountains, an unseen presence that haunted our every thought. We reached out to local authorities, hoping to find some explanation or at least a sense of closure. But there were no reports of anyone else experiencing similar phenomena at the campsite. It was as if our encounter was a singular event, a haunting only we had witnessed. Determined to understand what had happened, I delved into the history of the area, uncovering tales of lost hikers and tragic accidents that had plagued the Colorado mountains for decades. Legends spoke of restless spirits trapped in the snow, eternally searching for a way back home, their sorrow echoing through the silent nights. One evening, unable to bear the lingering fear any longer, I decided to return to the campsite with Jake and Laura, armed with better equipment and a resolve to uncover the truth. We arrived at the same secluded spot, the snow now starting to melt under the gentle warmth of the sun. The campsite appeared untouched. No sign of the ghostly footprints or the eerie footsteps from the night before. As we set up our gear, a familiar unease settled over us. We waited patiently, the afternoon passing in tense anticipation. But nothing happened, no knocking, no footsteps, nothing. We spent hours surveying the area, documenting our findings, but the campsite remained silent and still, as if the haunting had been nothing more than a figment of our collective fears. Exhausted and defeated, we packed up to leave, the mystery of that winter night still unresolved. As we drove away, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the snow-covered landscape. The memory of the knocking and the ghostly footprints lingered, a haunting reminder that some mysteries remain shrouded in darkness, beyond the reach of our understanding. But the experience left us with more questions than answers, a chilling reminder of the unknown forces that dwell in the wilderness. Waiting patiently in the silence of the snow-covered mountains, we never returned to that campsite, but the memory of that winter night continues to haunt me, a testament to the thin line between reality and the supernatural, and the enduring bond of friendship forged in the face of fear. And so, I warn others, respect the wilderness you explore, honor the memories of those who have been lost, and understand that some encounters transcend our understanding. For in the heart of Colorado, amidst the silent snow and lingering shadows, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of souls, but also a light that can guide us toward compassion and eternal peace. Story number 2. Whispers in the Snow, the knocking at Montana Forest. I still wake up in the dead of night, the memory of that fateful winter evening in the Montana National Forest etched into my mind like the intricate frost patterns that once adorned our tent. My name is Laura Mitchell, and the events that unfolded during our winter camping trip have left an indelible mark on my soul. a constant reminder of the thin veil between safety and the unknown. Mark and I had always been avid outdoor enthusiasts, seeking solace in the embrace of nature to escape the chaos of our daily lives. When the opportunity arose to spend a quiet winter night in the serene expanse of Montana's national forest, we jumped at the chance. The idea of being surrounded by snow-covered pines, the crisp winter air, and the peaceful silence was the perfect antidote to our hectic routines. We arrived at our chosen campsite on a clear December afternoon. The sky painted in hues of pink and orange as the sun began its descent behind the towering peaks. The snow had started to fall lightly, dusting the ground and creating a pristine blanket that sparkled under the fading light. Setting up our tent was a laborious task, the cold making our fingers numb as we struggled with the poles and stakes. Finally, with the campfire crackling and the aroma of roasted marshmallows filling the air, we settled into our temporary home for the night. As darkness enveloped the forest, the temperature plummeted, and the first heavy flakes of snow began to fall, turning the landscape into a silent, white wonderland. We huddled together near the fire, sipping hot cocoa and sharing stories to pass the time. The tranquility of the night was interrupted only by the occasional crackle of the fire and the soft whisper of the wind through the trees. Around 11 p.m., just as we were beginning to drift off to sleep, I was jolted awake by a strange noise, gentle, rhythmic knocking coming from outside our tent. My heart raced as I glanced over at Mark, who was already alert, eyes wide with concern. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He nodded, his expression mirroring my fear. "Yeah, it sounded like someone knocking on the door." First, we dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on our ears, or perhaps an animal curious about our presence. But the knocking persisted, growing more insistent with each passing minute. It started at the entrance of our tent, the fabric rippling as something pushed against it from the outside. We exchanged uneasy glances, the comforting warmth of the fire now a distant memory replaced by a growing sense of dread. "Maybe it's just a deer or a raccoon," Mark suggested, trying to steady his voice. "I'll go check it out." I shook my head, my fear holding me back. "No, it's too late. We should stay here and keep the fire going. Maybe it will stop." Reluctantly, we decided to remain inside, hoping that the noise would fade with time. But the knocking continued, now shifting from the tent's entrance to the windows, the glass rattling as if someone was gently tapping against it. The snowstorm outside intensified, the flakes swirling in a furious dance, making it difficult to see anything beyond the immediate vicinity of our campsite. As the night wore on, the knocking took on a more deliberate pattern, almost as if someone was trying to communicate with us. The eerie silence of the forest amplified every sound, turning the innocent rustling of the snow into a symphony of fear. I could feel Mark's anxiety mounting, his eyes darting towards the windows with each knock. "Mark, what if someone is trying to get in?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the storm. He looked at me, his face pale. "I don't know, but we need to stay calm. Maybe it's just the wind again." But as the clock ticked past midnight, the knocking transformed into a soft, haunting melody, a rhythm that seemed almost otherworldly. It was no longer random but carried a melancholic tune that resonated deep within me, stirring emotions I couldn't quite understand. Summoning every ounce of courage, I decided to confront the source of the noise. "Mark, I'm gonna check the windows. Maybe there's something we can do." He hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful, Laura." Clutching a flashlight, I cautiously approached the tent's entrance, the cold air biting at my skin as I peered out into the swirling snow. The darkness was thick, the shadows playing tricks on my mind, but I focused on the sound, following it to the nearest window. As I reached for the tent flap, the knocking ceased abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed in on me from all sides. Taking a deep breath, I unzipped the tent and stepped outside, the snow crunching beneath my boots. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the immediate area around us. But there was nothing, no sign of a person, no animal, just the relentless storm and the vast expanse of snow-covered trees. Confused and unnerved, I turned back towards Mark, only to see a shadowy figure standing just beyond the edge of our campsite. It was tall, its form barely discernible in the thick snow, but its presence was undeniable. My heart raced as I realized we were not alone. "Mark, look," I whispered urgently, pointing towards the figure. He followed my gaze, his face etched with fear. "What is that?" The figure remained motionless, its eyes fixed on us with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. As I took a step closer, the figure began to move slowly towards us, each step deliberate and haunting. The temperature around us seemed to drop further, the cold becoming almost tangible as the figure drew nearer. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and desperation. The figure stopped just a few feet away, its presence overwhelming. It raised a hand, and in that moment, the snowstorm seemed to calm, the winds dying down as if acknowledging the silent plea in its gaze. The figure's face remained hidden, but I could sense an immense sadness emanating from it, a sorrow that transcended time and space. "Why are you knocking?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. The figure remained silent, but the air around us was filled with an unspoken message, a longing for connection, a desire to be heard. As I stood there, the realization dawned on me that this was no ordinary visitor, but perhaps a restless spirit trapped in the frozen landscape, searching for peace. With a mix of fear and compassion, I extended a hand towards the figure. "If you need help, we're here." For a moment, nothing happened, and I wondered if I had merely imagined the encounter. But then, the figure began to fade, its form dissolving into the night as if it had never been there at all. The oppressive silence returned, and the snowstorm resumed its relentless fall, as if nothing had happened. Breathing a sigh of relief, I closed the tent flap and turned to Mark, who was staring at me with wide eyes. "What just happened?" he asked, his voice shaking. "I don't know," I replied, still trying to process the experience. "But I think it was a spirit, someone who lost their way, searching for peace." Mark nodded slowly, the fear evident in his expression. "We need to leave now. It's not safe to stay here." Agreeing, we hurriedly packed up our belongings, the tension between us palpable as we prepared to leave our campsite in the middle of the storm. As we made our way back to the truck, the snow continued to fall heavily, the wind howling around us like the cries of the lost souls from the night before. Driving through the blinding storm, we couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching us, following our every move. The road seemed endless, the snow piling high against the windshield, making it difficult to see anything beyond the immediate path. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, the weight of the night's events pressing down on me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached the main road, the snowstorm beginning to abate as the first hints of dawn broke through the darkness. We didn't stop until we were safely back in civilization, the warmth of our home welcoming us like a beacon of hope after the terrifying ordeal. In the days that followed, we couldn't shake the lingering fear and the haunting memories of that night. We reached out to local authorities and paranormal experts, hoping to find some answers or at least a sense of closure. But despite extensive searches and investigations, no trace of the shadowy figure was ever found. The campsite remained untouched, the snow-covered trees standing as silent witnesses to the night's events. Mark and I decided to leave the incident behind, vowing never to return to the Montana National Forest. Yet, the experience left us with an unshakable sense of unease, a constant reminder that there are forces beyond our understanding, lurking in the shadows of the natural world. But the memory of that night remains with me, a haunting yet comforting reminder of the thin line between honoring the past and succumbing to fear. I often find myself gazing out at the snowy landscapes, the echoes of that winter night lingering in my mind, a testament to the spirits that linger in forgotten places and the souls that seek to find their way home. And so, I warn others, respect the wilderness you explore, honor the memories of those who have been lost, and understand that some encounters transcend our understanding. For in the heart of Montana, amidst the silent snow and lingering spirits, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of souls, but also a light that can guide us toward compassion and eternal peace. Story number 3. Black Shadows in the Snow, my family's Alaska story. I still wake up in the dead of night. The memory of that fateful winter evening in Alaska etched into my mind like the frost patterns that once clung stubbornly to my bedroom window. My name is Mark Johnson, and the events my family and I experienced in our secluded cabin have left an indelible mark on our souls. A constant reminder of the thin veil between safety and the unknown. Living alone in a rural farmhouse had always been my sanctuary. The endless stretches of snow-covered fields, the towering pines standing sentinel against the biting cold, and the peaceful silence that enveloped our home provided a sense of calm that city life could never offer. Our cabin, inherited from my grandparents, was a relic of simpler times. Its wooden beams and sturdy stone foundation standing strong against the harsh winters that swept through Wisconsin year after year. It was the first week of December, the air crisp with the promise of the approaching holidays. The days were short, and the nights stretched on endlessly, each one colder and darker than the last. On one particularly frigid night, as the wind howled through the trees and the snow piled high against the windows, I found myself restless and unable to sleep. I was sitting in the living room, working on my laptop to prepare for the upcoming week, while Emily was busy in the kitchen preparing dinner. Our 2 young children, Lily and Tom, were playing quietly near the fireplace. The house creaked and groaned under the weight of the snow, each sound amplified in the silence of the night. Around midnight, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps creaking on the wooden floorboards coming from the basement. At first, I dismissed it as the house settling or perhaps one of the kids moving around. But the footsteps were too deliberate, too rhythmic to be anything but someone or something moving down there. My heart pounded in my chest as I lay still, straining to listen. The footsteps stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in on me from all sides. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the unease deepened, settling like a stone in my stomach, summoning every ounce of courage. I decided to investigate, grabbing a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. I descended the stairs to the basement, each step echoing ominously in the stillness. The basement was dimly lit, the faint glow of the light bulb casting long shadows on the concrete walls. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and old wood, a testament to years of neglect. I reached the bottom of the stairs, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The basement was empty, no signs of anyone else being there. The only noise was the soft drip of water from a leaky pipe and the distant howl of the wind outside. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, relief washing over me. But just as I was about to turn back, a chilling gust of wind swept through the basement, extinguishing my flashlight and plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to relight it, my hands trembling uncontrollably. When the light flickered back to life, I saw nothing out of the ordinary, no intruder, no sign of disturbance. Shaking off the fear, I decided to call it a night. I ascended the stairs, trying to calm my racing heart. But as I reached the top, something caught my eye. Standing at the end of the hallway was a shadowy figure, its outline barely visible in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat as I stared, unable to tear my gaze away. The figure was tall, draped in a flowing white gown that seemed to shimmer in the faint light. Its face was obscured by darkness, but its presence was unmistakably sorrowful. I froze, fear and confusion battling within me as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it began to move slowly towards me, its steps silent on the wooden floor. The temperature in the hallway dropped noticeably, the chill seeping into my bones as I watched the figure approach. "Mark," a voice echoed softly, sending shivers down my spine. I recognized the voice, Eleanor Whitaker, the name I had come across during my research on the cabin's history. Eleanor had been a maid who had mysteriously disappeared one winter night over a century ago. Her tragic story was a local legend, whispered among neighbors but never fully explained. Summoning every ounce of courage, I approached the figure, reaching out a hand in a gesture of compassion. "Eleanor, if you're here, please let us help you." As I touched the figure, the air around us grew colder, the shadows deepening as if the darkness itself was reaching out to consume her. I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness emanating from her, a sorrow that seemed to stretch across the ages. "You must remember," she whispered, her voice filled with despair. "Remember our stories, honor our memories." With those final words, the figure began to fade, the oppressive chill lifting as dawn's first light began to filter through the windows. The hallway returned to its silent state, the shadows no longer dancing menacingly. I stood there, breathless and shaken, knowing that we had just witnessed something beyond our understanding, determined to uncover the truth behind Eleanor's lingering presence. I delved deeper into the cabin's history, piecing together the tragic stories of those who had lived and died within its walls. The tales spoke of greed, despair, and the relentless pursuit of fortune that had led to untimely deaths and unresolved sorrows, leaving behind only shadows and regrets. One night, unable to shake the feeling that Eleanor was still watching over us, I decided to perform a small ceremony to honor her memory and help her find the peace she so desperately sought. I gathered candles and fresh flowers, setting them around the living room in a circle of remembrance. With Emily and the kids huddled nearby, I began to speak, my voice steady despite the fear that lingered in my mind. "To Eleanor and all those who have been lost within these walls, we honor your memories and seek to bring you peace. May your spirits find the rest you deserve." As I spoke, the room seemed to grow warmer, the oppressive chill lifting as if a weight had been removed. The candles flickered gently, their flames casting a soft glow that filled the space with a sense of calm. The shadows receded, and the air was filled with a gentle warmth that brought a sense of relief and closure. With the ceremony complete, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and peace. The haunting presence that had once dominated our nights was now a distant memory, replaced by the warmth of family and the promise of new beginnings. The legends of Eleanor Whitaker and the other restless spirits had been acknowledged and honored, allowing them to move on from their eternal search for peace. In the weeks that followed, the strange occurrences ceased, the shadows no longer lurking and the whispers fading into the background of everyday life. Our home returned to its peaceful state, the haunting presence now a distant memory replaced by the warmth and comfort of newfound peace. But the memory of that night remains with me, a haunting yet comforting reminder of the thin line between honoring the past and succumbing to fear. I often find myself gazing out at the snow-covered landscape, the image of Eleanor standing at the window a testament to the enduring bonds between the living and the dead. And so, I warn others, respect the histories that shape our homes, honor the memories of those who have been lost, and understand that some encounters transcend our understanding. For in the heart of Wisconsin, amidst the silent snow and lingering spirits, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of souls, but also a light that can guide us toward compassion and eternal peace.